And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska aviation weather outlook on Sunday, October 5th, 2025. And to set things up for early in the week, we have active weather as of this Sunday afternoon, early evening. We're going to have a second area of low pressure come across Bristol Bay, the northern Alaska Peninsula, and shifting energy eastward as that happens. Rain is going to increase along the Gulf Coast this Sunday night and early Monday morning. Some of the rain heavier, especially from around Cordova through Yakutat, and then showers and areas of rain will spread across the Panhandle. And then a stronger low pressure system in front is going to track up through the western Bering and then slam into the west coast with some strong winds. As a result, we have coastal flood watches up all the way from just east of Utqiagvik down along the Chukchi Sea coast and the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, and the YK deltas. And this will be Tuesday into Wednesday, lingering even into Thursday across the Chukchi Sea coastline. So active weather there. And then we also have some stronger winds through the Alaska Range through this Sunday afternoon. Southeast to south winds could gust 50 to 60 miles an hour through some of the passes, such as Isabel. And looking at Monday morning, we expect IFR conditions across the Panhandle back toward Yakutat and up into the lower Copper River Basin. We also have IFR conditions along the Brooks Range and southward, as well as in the areas of the northwest, the west arm of the Alaska Range for Monday afternoon. Still some pockets of IFR for the inner Channel Mountains up against British Columbia and as you get in there from Yakutat Bay. But a broad area of IFR conditions are expected Monday afternoon around Utqiagvik down through the north slope along much of the Brooks Range and the southern slopes just north there of the Yukon River. And then out here in the western Aleutians, an area of IFR conditions as a stronger wind field will be advancing northeastward toward the west and southwest coast. By Tuesday morning, low pressure out here in the western Bering, and we have stronger front and wind field coming inland here along the west coast, so you'll have to also deal with those winds increasing there, especially Tuesday into Wednesday. Still areas of IFR along the inner coastal mountains of the Panhandle for the inner channels up against British Columbia, and an area of IFR conditions along the Arctic coast, as well as the Brooks Range, North Slope, and south of there to the Yukon River. And for Tuesday afternoon, improving conditions out over southeast mainland, northeastern Gulf Coast. Still some MVFR across the Panhandle, but here we have a feed of moisture coming northeastward out of the North Pacific across the Bering. This frontal system has the stronger wind field with it, hence that's why there is that coastal flood watch up in effect from essentially Kuskokwim Bay all the way along the west coast to just east of Utqiagvik. And again, conditions will be certainly windier, and that potential for higher surf action will exist Tuesday, Wednesday, and even lingering up here along the northwestern Arctic coast into Thursday morning, early afternoon. So for the passes here on Monday, IFR conditions will hold there in the east central Brooks Range, Anaktuvik, and Adigan passes. As we drop south to Lake Clark and Merrill, generally MVFR conditions for Monday. Rainy Pass, IFR giving way to MVFR conditions. Windy Pass, generally MVFR expected there for Monday. Isabel, also MVFR. And then further east, Mentasta Pass should generally see some VFR conditions, with MVFR conditions prevailing further south across the Copper River Basin. Of note, too, as we go into Tuesday, we are going to see some moisture coming northward up toward the 40-mile gold country that could result into some snow as well. So conditions out, just keep that in mind as looking ahead. In Tanita Pass, MVFR conditions for Monday. Portage MVFR, and then in the far north end of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White is looking at IFR conditions on Monday. So here we have at the surface, the freezing line has been pulled northward up into the Chukchi Sea and then comes back down across south slopes of the Brooks Range into the Yukon Flats. But we have warmer air aloft over the Yukon, freezing levels above 18 8,000 feet there, and they go upwards 10,000 feet across the panhandle. So there's warmer air aloft over this region, some ridging. And then the troughiness out here, we have that secondary low development through this region later this Sunday and into Monday, shifting into the western Gulf. So this is where we have an area of low pressure. And then out back to the west, another low coming up into the western Bering is going to pull warmer air across the Aleutians, so we find the freezing levels trying to recover back up to near 10,000 feet as you get out toward the central western Aleutians. And on Monday, where there is thicker cloud cover and precipitation occurring along areas of the Gulf Coast, above 10,000 feet, you could encounter some icing there in the Panhandle and out toward Yakutat, Cape Suckling. Further west, generally above 6,000 or even 8,000 feet over areas of the interior, the southwest area, and extending down along the west arm of the Alaska Range. And then as this front, this push of warmer, moist air, especially comes in aloft, we find that freezing levels will be rising upward, so will the icing levels. So any thicker clouds that may produce precipitation get above 8,000 feet there up toward the Nunavik Island, St. Paul, above 10,000 feet and 12,000 feet as you get down there around the central Aleutians. And the wind fields are going to be pretty strong with the system. We have a trough low pressure on Monday out here over the Gulf with ahead of it southwest flow as high as 105 knot wind field there over the Panhandle. Back to the west, this is what we call an anticyclonically curved jet core. And the strongest part of it across the areas of the lower Yukon, YK deltas into Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, northwest winds, 110, 120 knots. But here's the real jet core back out here, pushing up now into the lower Bering, coming across the western Aleutians, 150 knot wind max, and then taking it down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, a broad wind field of 50 to even 90 knot winds, this jet core in the mid-levels coming across the western Aleutians Monday afternoon. And then on at the closer to the surface, 3,000 feet aloft, we have a 90 knot wind max. That's strong. So there will be turbulence out here and through the western half of the Aleutians for sure. And that strong wind field is heading northeastward. That's why we have this coastal flood watch for such a broad area of the west coast from Kuskokwim Bay all the way up to just east of Reykjavik. And that's from Tuesday morning until Thursday morning, especially there in the far north. Now, across the Gulf, winds at 3,000 feet are coming out of Cook Inlet, Kennedy entrance there as high as 50 knots. And so where we're looking at turbulence on Monday, broad area of turbulence, the most notable will extend out along the Alaska Peninsula, but especially back through the Aleutians, of which certainly will likely be some areas of severe turbulence possible, surface to 3,000 feet, especially from the central back through the western Aleutians. And again, that wind field is heading northeastward. So this is just on Monday. Conditions are going to deteriorate along the west-southwest coast as that energy comes northeastward. And on Monday, we still could find some moderate turbulence along areas of Bristol Bay, inland from there up into the Alaska Peninsula, around Kodiak Island, just off of the northern Gulf Coast, and then up around the Alaska Range. There still could be some moderate turbulence in along the ridge lines and through some of the passes, surface to 12,000 feet.